Welcome to Communicate to Lead, the podcast that empowers leaders and aspiring leaders to communicate with clarity and impact. I'm Kele Belton, CEO and successful entrepreneur, and your host for today. I'm here to equip you with all the essential tools and strategies to master effective communication and lead your team to success. As the founder and CEO of The Tailored Approach, my goal is to empower you to be the best leader you can be. So sit back, relax, and join me in today's episode as we dive into the art of communicating like a true leader.
Let me ask you something. When people at work describe you, what words do they use? Are you the reliable one, the person who gets things done, great with details? And here's perhaps a harder question. Are those descriptions helping you get promoted, or are they keeping you in a box? If you've ever felt like people have decided who you are and they're not willing to see anything else, this episode is for you. Today, we're talking about how to reset the impression you've made at work, even when people think they already know exactly who you are. I'm going to walk you through the R.E.F.R.A.M.E method, a strategic 7-step approach to repositioning yourself when you've been typecast. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how to break out of the box that people have put you in and start being recognized for your full leadership potential. Welcome back to Communicate to Lead. I'm your host, Kele Belton, communication and leadership coach, facilitator, and speaker. If you're tuning in today, there's a good chance you are dealing with something frustrating. Maybe you've been noticing it for months, or maybe it just hit you this week. Here's what's really happening when you're not getting the opportunities you deserve. You probably have been typecast, not because of what you can't do, but because of what people have decided you are. You are the reliable one, the go-to person who gets things done, great with the details. All of those descriptions sound positive, but they're actually keeping you in a box that's way too small for where you are headed. When opportunities for leadership roles come around, your name doesn't make the list. When strategic projects are assigned, you get the execution work, not necessarily the visioning work. And when senior leadership talks about high potential employees, maybe your name is not even in that conversation. I talked with a client last month, let's call her Jasmine, who had the exact same problem. Jasmine had been in her role for 3 years, consistently exceeding expectations. Her manager loved her work. Her teammates depended on her. But when a director level position opened up, Jasmine didn't even get an interview. Instead, someone who was always ready to share their thoughts in meetings, someone comfortable thinking out loud, even when they didn't know how to execute most of what they were talking about, got tapped for the role. When Jasmine asked for feedback, which I always encourage you to do, her manager said something that stopped her in her tracks. We see you as such a strong individual contributor. We were not sure you wanted to move into leadership. Translation, we've already decided who you are and it's not a leader. If that sounds familiar, stay with me because today we are talking about how to reset that impression you've made, even when people think they already know exactly who you are. Before we dive in today's episode, I want to mention something exciting. I'm launching the Ignite Your Leadership Power Accelerator, a 12-week group coaching program specifically designed for women in middle management who are positioning themselves for their next promotion or new leadership role. We are starting in early March, and I'll be hosting a free masterclass on February 24th, where we'll break down the 4 mistakes that keep high-performing women stuck in middle management. If repositioning your professional brand is something you are actively working on, this program is for you. I'll share more details throughout the episode. But right now, let's talk about why you are stuck in a box and how to break out of it. Here's the thing about first impressions at work. They're rarely about your actual first day. The impression people form of you happens gradually based on what you do repeatedly. And once that impression is solidified, it becomes incredibly hard to shift it. You get known for something. Maybe it's your technical expertise, your project management skills, your ability to handle crisis situations. And that reputation feels good at first. It feels like recognition. But then you realize that that same reputation has become a ceiling. People stop seeing you as someone who could do other things. They see you as someone who does this thing really well. And in their minds, asking you to do something different would be a loss to the team. I see this pattern play out consistently, constantly with the women I coach. You're the person who always has the answer in meetings, so you become the expert, which sounds great until you realize you are not being invited into strategic planning sessions because they assume you're too focused in the weeds. Or you're the one who never pushes back on deadlines, so you become the dependable one until you realize you're getting task work while others are getting development opportunities. The problem is that you've gotten so good at what you do that people can't imagine you doing anything else. And here's what makes this even more frustrating. When you are trying to show up differently, people resist. They don't recognize this version of you. They think you're being inconsistent, or they assume you are having a bad day. They literally don't have a mental category for this new version of you. That's why we can't just act more like a leader and expect people to suddenly see you in a different light. You need a strategy for reshaping how you are perceived by others. And that's exactly what the R.E.F.R.A.M.E method gives you. This kind of strategic repositioning is one of the core skills we develop in the Ignite Your Leadership Power Accelerator, because most women try to change how they are seen by simply working harder or adding more to their plate. That doesn't work. You need to be deliberate about dismantling the old perception while building a new one, and you need support to do it effectively. Before we dive into the framework, I would appreciate your help with something. If you're finding value in this podcast, if these conversations are helping you see your leadership differently or giving you strategies you can actually use, would you take 2 minutes to rate the show or leave a review? Every review helps more women leaders find the show. When you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening, it signals that this content is valuable. And that means another woman who's struggling with the same challenges you are facing has a better chance of finding these strategies. Your review doesn't need to be long. Even a few sentences about what resonated with you, that's enough to make a difference. Thank you so much for leaving a review. Okay, let's get back into it. Let's break down the framework. So the R.E.F.R.A.M.E method, as I mentioned earlier, is a 7-step process for strategically resetting how you are perceived at work. Each letter of the word R.E.F.R.A.M.E represents a specific action you need to take to shift from being typecast to being recognized for your full potential. Here's what it stands for. So the R in R.E.F.R.A.M.E stands for recognize the pattern. The E stands for establish your new vision. F, find strategic opportunities. The second R, reintroduce yourself. The A stands for amplify through actions. The M, monitor and adjust. And the last E stands for enlist strategic allies. Think of this like resetting the narrative in a book. You can't simply erase what people already know about you, but you can introduce new chapters that reframe the entire story. So let's go through each step. We start off with the first R, which stands for recognize the pattern. The first step is the hardest. You have to name exactly how you have been typecast. This is not about being self-critical. It's not about judgment. It's about being honest. What's the label that people have unconsciously assigned to you? What box have they put you in? Here are some common patterns I see from my one-on-one coaching with women. There's the executor. You get work done, but you're not invited to strategy discussions. Then there's the expert. You know your domain inside and out, but you are not seen as someone who can lead cross-functionally. Then there's the people pleaser. You build strong relationships, but people think you lack the edge to make tough decisions. And another example is the quiet professional. You do excellent work, but you are not viewed as someone who can rally a team or influence senior leadership. The pattern reveals itself in specific ways. Maybe you notice that in meetings, people turn to you for execution plans, but not for strategic input. Maybe you've always invited to working sessions, but rarely to planning sessions. Perhaps people describe you with words like reliable and thorough, but never with words like visionary or strategic. Jasmine, the client I mentioned earlier, realized she'd been typecast as the detail-oriented implementer. Every time she offered strategic input in meetings, people would quickly pivot to asking her about timelines and logistics. She was really excellent at those things, but that excellence had become her identity in their minds. So here's your assignment for the step. Write down the perception you think people have of you. Then test it. Pay attention this week to how people respond to you in meetings. What kind of work gets assigned to you, and how are you described in emails or conversations? You'll start to see the pattern clearly. Once you see it, you can strategically disrupt it. That is the R in reframe. Here's the first E, which stands for establish your new vision. Now that you know how you are currently being perceived, you need to get crystal clear on how you want to be perceived. This is where most people get stuck. They know they don't like the current label, but they haven't defined what they want instead. And without that clarity, you end up taking scattered actions that don't add up to a coherent new image. So let's get specific. How do you want to be described a year from now? Think about the words you want people to use when they talk about you. Not generic leadership words like impactful or strategic. I mean the specific capabilities and qualities that position you for the role you want next. For example, if you want to move into a director role, you might want to be known as someone who sees the big picture and connects dots across departments, develops talent and builds high-performing teams, makes decisions quickly even with incomplete information, influences without authority, and spots opportunities before others do. If you want to transition from a technical role into people leadership, you might want to be known as someone who translates complex concepts for different audiences, builds consensus among stakeholders with competing priorities, coaches others to solve problems independently, and creates vision and gets others excited about it. The key is to identify 3 to 5 specific qualities or capabilities that define your new professional identity. Write them down, because everything you do from this point forward should reinforce one of these qualities. This is the foundation of the clarity pillar in my accelerator, getting absolutely clear on the leader you are becoming, not just the tasks that you are completing. Most women skip this step and wonder why they are working so hard without getting the recognition. You can't build a new professional brand if you haven't defined what it is. Jasmine's new vision, the client that I talked about earlier, was to be seen as the strategic problem solver who elevates teams. She wanted to maintain her reputation for execution while being recognized for her ability to think systematically and develop others. That became her vision and North Star for every decision she made about where to focus her energy. So here's my question to you. What's your North Star? Okay, let's step into the next phase, which is F, which stands for Find Strategic Opportunities of the R.E.F.R.A.M.E method. Once you know how you want to be perceived, you need to identify opportunities to demonstrate those new capabilities. And here's the important part. You're not looking for more work. You're looking for different work that showcases the qualities you just defined in step 2. This means you're going to start saying yes to some things you haven't done before and saying no to some things you've always done. And you might feel uncomfortable. Let's say you want to be known as someone who develops talent. You might volunteer to mentor someone in a different department, or offer to lead a lunch and learn session on a skill you've mastered, or even create onboarding materials that help new team members get up to speed faster. These activities position you as someone who thinks about team development, not only individual tasks. Or let's say you want to be known as someone who sees the big picture. You might ask to sit in on a cross-functional planning meeting, or write a brief analysis connecting your team's work to broader company objectives, or even reach out to colleagues in other departments to understand how their priorities intersect with yours. The strategic part is choosing opportunities that will be visible to the people whose perception matters most and whose perception you want to change. If you're trying to reposition yourself with senior leadership, you need to find opportunities that put you in proximity to them, not simply work that keeps you heads down at your desk. Jasmine, my client, identified 3 strategic opportunities. First, she presented her team's quarterly results to the leadership team instead of simply sending a report. Second, she started leading a cross-departmental project that had been stalled for months. And third, she started hosting monthly development sessions where she's teaching skills that help her colleagues grow. Each of these opportunities reinforces her new identity as a strategic problem solver who elevates teams. And because she's been deliberate about it, people have started noticing the shift. So here's what you need to do for this step. Identify 2 to 3 strategic opportunities in the next 30 days. Not projects that will overload you, but opportunities that let you demonstrate your new professional identity in visible ways. And here's the next step. The R in R.E.F.R.A.M.E stands for reintroduce yourself. This step feels uncomfortable. I totally get it. I will understand, but it's essential. You need to explicitly reintroduce yourself to key stakeholders. Now, I don't mean you walk into your manager's office and say, "Hi, I'm trying to rebrand myself." That would be weird, but you do need to create moments where you articulate your current priorities and capabilities in a way that challenges the existing perception of you. Here's how that might sound in a one-on-one with your manager. I've been thinking about development priorities for this year, and I want to focus on building my skills in strategic planning and team leadership. I would love your input on where you see opportunities for me to take on more of that work. Or you could say the following in a networking conversation with a senior leader. I've been focused on execution for the past few years, but I'm really energized and excited by projects that require systems thinking and cross-functional collaboration. If you hear about opportunities in that space, I'd appreciate you keeping me in mind. The goal is not to apologize for what you have been doing up until now or to announce a dramatic transformation. The goal is to simply plant seeds that help people see you in a new light. You're essentially giving them permission to update their mental file on you. My client Jasmine is doing this right now. In a recent one-on-one with her manager, she said, "I've been thinking about the director role that opened up, and I realized I haven't been clear about my career goals. I'm working on building leadership presence and strategic thinking, and I'd love to have more conversations with you about what that path forward can look like." Her manager, believe it or not, was surprised, but in a good way. He genuinely thought Jasmine was very happy and content in her current role because she'd never articulated anything different. That one conversation has started to shift his perception of her trajectory. You don't need to have this conversation with everybody, let me say that. But you do need to have it with the 3 to 5 people whose perception of you has the biggest impact on your opportunities. So making sure that you have a list and start having those conversations is a great step taking in the direction of changing that identity. And here's the A in R.E.F.R.A.M.E, which stands for amplify through actions. So here comes the part where you consistently demonstrate your new professional identity through your actions. And here's the reality. People don't change their minds about you because of one conversation or one impressive project. They change their minds when they see a pattern of behavior that contradicts their original impression. So you need to create that pattern deliberately and consistently. This means showing up in new ways, not occasionally, but consistently. If you want to be seen as someone who thinks strategically, you need to contribute strategic insights in every meeting, not only the ones where you feel confident. If you want to be seen as someone who develops others, you need to make coaching and mentoring a regular part of your workflow, not something you do when you have extra time. And here's what's crucial. You need to make these new behaviors visible. I've worked with so many women who start doing this work behind the scenes, and then they are incredibly frustrated when no one is noticing. Don't rely on people stumbling across your growth. Make it visible so they can see it. And this means sharing insights from projects in team meetings or Slack channels, sending brief updates to key stakeholders on strategic initiatives you're involved in, speaking up early in meetings to set the tone rather than waiting until the end, and asking questions that demonstrate systems thinking, not only focusing on task execution. Jasmine is doing something small but powerful. Every week, she sends her manager a brief update highlighting one strategic insight from her work and one way she supported her team's development. It takes her 10 minutes to write, but it's consistently reinforcing the new narrative that she's building. And in just a few weeks, her manager has started referring to her differently in conversations with other leaders, describing her as someone who really understands the business holistically. This shift isn't happening by accident. It's happening because Jasmine is making her evolution visible and consistent. This level of strategic personal branding is exactly what we work on in the Ignite Your Leadership Power Accelerator. It's one thing to know you should do this. It's another thing to actually execute it consistently while managing everything else on your plate. That's why having structured support and accountability makes such an incredible difference. Okay, we are now at step 6, where we use the M in R.E.F.R.A.M.E, which stands for monitor and adjust. You can't just set this plan in motion and hope for the best. You need to actively monitor how the reframing is working and be willing to adjust your approach. And here's how to do that. 1, listen for language shifts. Pay attention to how people describe you in meetings, emails, or casual conversations. Are you hearing the words you want to hear? Are people starting to describe you differently? 2, track opportunities. Are you being invited to different types of meetings? Are different kinds of projects being offered to you? Are people seeking your input on things they didn't before? And then lastly, number 3, ask for feedback. Every 4 to 6 weeks, check in with your manager or a trusted colleague. Ask them directly. I've been working on developing my strategic thinking skills. Have you noticed a shift? This gives them a chance to articulate what they have been observing, and it reminds them to keep watching. So when you ask them for feedback again, they are ready to share it. And that is what my client Jasmine is doing. She is tracking this deliberately. She has created a very simple spreadsheet where she notes every time someone describes her differently, every new type of meeting she's invited to, and every piece of feedback that indicates her reframe is working. After just a month, she's noticing that senior leaders are starting to pull her into early stage project planning, something that didn't happen before. And that's her signal that the repositioning is starting to take hold. If you're not seeing any shifts within 4 to 6 weeks, it's time to adjust. Maybe you need to be more visible. Maybe you need to have more direct conversations. Perhaps you need to choose a different strategic opportunity or opportunities. The point is, you are not passively waiting for people to notice. You are actively steering the narrative. And then finally, the last step in R.E.F.R.A.M.E, it's the E, which stands for enlist strategic allies. You knew this one was coming. The final step is the one that so many women skip, and it's the most powerful one. You need allies who will actively reinforce your new professional identity. And here's why this matters. You can say all the right things about yourself, but when someone else says those things about you, it carries exponentially more weight. So what you need to do is identify 2 to 3 people who have influence in your organization and who have already witnessed your new capabilities in action. These are people who worked with you on strategic projects, saw you lead initiatives, or observed you developing others. They are positioned to speak about you in rooms where you are not present, and they have specific examples to reference. This doesn't mean asking them to lie for you or exaggerate your capabilities. It means giving them permission to amplify what they have already seen you do. Here's the key. You only approach someone as an ally after they've witnessed your new capabilities in action. Then you reference the specific work they observed and ask them to speak to it. It could sound something like, I wanted to follow up on the cross-functional project we worked on together. I'm intentionally building my reputation as someone who thinks strategically and develops teams. And your perspective on how I approach that project would be incredibly valuable. If my name comes up in conversations about leadership opportunities, I would appreciate you speaking to what you have observed. Notice the difference? You're not asking them to watch for future work. You are asking them to amplify the work they've already seen you do. Jasmine identified 3 strategic allies: her manager, a senior director in another department who's seen her cross-functional work, and a peer who recently got promoted is now in leadership meetings. She's having direct conversations with all 3, and they are becoming vocal advocates for her. She's already noticing the impact. Her manager is bringing up her name in leadership discussions. The senior director has mentioned her strategic thinking in meetings, and her peer is speaking about her ability to develop others. People in decision-making roles are starting to see her differently. That's the power of strategic allies. They extend your influence into spaces where you can't be present. If you want to accelerate your path into leadership, you need this kind of strategic support. It's one of the reasons I built the Ignite Your Leadership Power Accelerator as a group program, because the women who advance fastest aren't the ones who are doing it alone. They are building relationships, learning from each other, and advocating for each other. And that collective momentum creates opportunities none of them could create individually. So let's bring it all together. If you have been typecast at work, if people have put you in a box that's too small, where you headed, you don't have to accept that as permanent. But you do have to be strategic about how you reframe that perception. The R.E.F.R.A.M.E method gives you a clear path. Step 1, recognize the pattern. Name exactly how you've been typecast. Step 2, establish your new vision. Define how you want to be perceived. Step 3, find strategic opportunities. Choose work that demonstrate your new identity. Step 4, reintroduce yourself. Have direct conversations with key stakeholders. Step 5, amplify through actions. Consistently demonstrate your new professional brand. Step 6, monitor and adjust. Track your progress and refine your approach. And lastly, step number 7, enlist strategic allies. Build relationships with people who will advocate for you in rooms where you are not present. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about making sure people see the full scope of who you already are. Jasmine, my client, is on her way to that director role, not because she's working harder. She was already working hard. She's a high performer, but because she's strategically repositioning herself in the eyes of the people who control her opportunities. The shift is happening, and it's only been a month, and you, my friend, can do the same. If this episode resonated with you, I want you to know that you don't have to figure this out alone. In early March, I'm launching the Ignite Your Leadership Power Accelerator, a 12-week group coaching program. And if you are a woman in middle management and you are ready to position yourself for senior leadership, your next leadership role, then you definitely want to join us. We work together on building the clarity, the confidence, and credibility you need to step into senior leadership, including exactly how to reframe your professional brand so the right people see you in the right way. I'm hosting a free masterclass on Tuesday, February 24th, where I'll walk you through the 4 mistakes that keep high-performing women stuck in middle management, and I'll share more details about this program next week. I encourage you to join the waitlist for the upcoming cohort. Click the link in the show notes. It'll take you directly to the waitlist. Put your name in, put an email in, and as soon as we open up for the masterclass and registrations open for the cohort, you'll be the first to get an email. When you join, you'll get priority notification with registration opens, access to the masterclass, an exclusive resource on strategic visibility that I'm not sharing anywhere else. So click the link in the show notes and add your name to the waitlist. Let's make sure that 2026 is the year you stop being underestimated. Before I go, I want to remind you, if you did not hear my episode of last week, to help you stay in leadership mode all week, starting February 2nd, I'm adding to the podcast schedule. Every Monday, I'll drop a 5-minute Monday Momentum Shorty episode, one unfiltered strategy to set your tone, followed by our deep dive episodes every Thursday. This isn't about giving you more homework, but instead, it's all about giving you high-stakes tools you need to hit your 2026 goals without the fluff. So look for that episode on Monday, February 2nd. Thank you for listening to Communicate to Lead. Until next Monday, my friend, I am Kele, reminding you that great communication is the foundation of inspiring leadership. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember to communicate to lead.